Hello and welcome to Rotted Reviews, and I'm still behind the desk in my freezing cold office while my furnace is waiting for its new parts. Regardless, I didn't want to waste any more time. I wanted to continue talking about horror movies that I've seen, and last night was a bit of a doozy. Now, before I get into this review, I do want to just remind folks that if you've been digging my content, if you like my channel, please click subscribe. It really does help me out. And if you want to support me further, I highly encourage you to at least check out the link to my Patreon. We have the lowest tier starting at $1 a month. There's exclusive content, a Discord community, watch parties, all sorts of fun stuff. So a movie caught my eye last night as a $3.99 US rental on Amazon Prime, also Vudu, Microsoft, and Redbox apparently. The 2021 movie Apparitions. Filmed in Australia, the synopsis for this film is, with only nightmares for childhood memories, Lily Stone returns to her family home to find out what happened to her parents. Despite the locals' warning about an evil presence cursing the house, Lily crosses the threshold and discovers not all the ghosts that haunt us are dead. Alright, so fair enough, interesting enough concept, a little indie movie about returning to a family home with a curse. Cool beans, I was on board. Unfortunately, by the time I finished watching it and the end credits were rolling, I was just thanking the heavens it was over. Written and directed by Perry Cummings and Paul Anthony Nelson, this kind of seems like a situation of people wearing too many hats, and I can understand where that's coming from for small productions, for indie productions, when people don't have the budget to necessarily offload a lot of responsibilities, but that doesn't necessarily translate well to the screen. Perry Cummings being a writer and a director and having a major role in this film, as well as Paul Anthony Nelson being a writer and director and editor, it just kind of seemed like nothing about this film really coalesced. Almost. You see, the element of Apparitions that really kind of boggles my mind is it has all the hallmark elements of a low-budget indie production that has that amateurish, not really knowing what they're doing quite yet quality to it. That kind of thing where you can tell that somebody is on the path to doing something right, but they don't quite have the polish, the refinement, and the practice to put it to screen properly. Actors that are interacting with one another but really kind of seem like they're trying to remember their next line instead of actually having natural dialogue. Editing where you're trying to have jump scares, but none of them are actually landing because the tempo of everything is just completely off. But the one element of this film that did work was honestly the camera work. The cinematography of this film wasn't anything outstanding or lavishly wonderful, but when you see the actors that are putting on these kind of performances and you see the editing mistakes that are causing the feel of things to remain flat, it's kind of odd to have a visual style that seems to be well polished enough. The look and the feel of what was actually being presented on the screen scene by scene was really not that bad. It played with angles, it played with colors, it had competent enough focus pulls, it had B-roll shots, establishing shots, pickup shots, and they were kind of interspersed throughout so that nothing in theory was supposed to feel stagnant, but then you ran into the same editing mistakes that actually did make it feel stagnant. Now, you can't help when you start watching a movie and in those first few seconds you're kind of taking the cues from the aesthetic quality of it to try and determine the overall quality of it, and this one kind of betrayed itself because it looked fairly decent, but then unfortunately, people started talking, and scenes started changing, and all those weird moments and amateurish mistakes started to really pop up. You know, I don't want to seem overly harsh. I never want to come across in my reviews as cruel or venomous, and I would be honestly happy to see what Perry Cummings or Paul Anthony Nelson were to come up with next. But the big takeaway that I had from watching Apparitions is that it was just a snooze fest. There really wasn't a whole lot going on that was dynamic or engaging. All of the characters, and I mean all of them, felt 100% completely flat. The storyline itself was rather unbelievable, and again, the acting chops weren't really there to sell that unbelievable nature. Sometimes you can get away with having stuff that stretches the suspension of disbelief as long as an actor can present it properly. That really wasn't the case here, but even so, the whole concept of anything that was actually happening to these characters was completely dismissed by the fact that I didn't care about any of them. There was a whole lot of tell, don't show, where characters were describing the events of things that had happened rather than showing them or telling them while they're showing them, and completely dissolving any potential tension that may have arisen as a result of it. So ultimately, all that we're really being presented on screen is tales being told of these characters that we have no central relationship with. And then the stuff, the plot reveals, the twists, the climactic moments, and so forth start happening to these characters, but the problem is there's absolutely zero emotional engagement with them. So it's just watching stuff on screen instead of actually being affected by a film. And even that could possibly have been excusable if the editing allowed for some surprises, for some good jump scares, for some tension moments kind of stretched throughout. But every single one of them that it attempted failed. Jump scares are a kind of a tricky thing. You need to really have the editing down tight. Just a couple of frames, too much here. A couple of frames, not enough there. Not stretching out the preamble long enough. Things like that. It can really affect how well or how badly they actually arrive on screen. And again, I think this is just a situation where they need more practice. They need more experience. I think that they could actually deliver something. So I do hope that this cinematic team continues doing what they're doing. But Apparitions, I just don't think it was worth the watch. It certainly wasn't worth a $3.99 rental fee, so I have no choice but to say that I really can't recommend this one. I mean, maybe if you're in the mood for something that you can kind of academically dissect, I think that there's some interesting, noteworthy things happening here as far as kind of the 𝗘𝗾𝘂𝗶𝗽𝗺𝗀 and version of horror movies, but other than that, yeah, I would just say save your money. Apparitions is one that's worth passing by. But that should about do it. That's my review. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click like. And again, subscriptions do help. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.